South Park. It might be the most brilliantly executed cartoon of all time. It's not my favorite, but it is definitely very, very well written. And today we are going to be talking about a very important episode from South Park, which is Go God Go. And if you haven't already, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe at the bottom, and share this video with your friends if they are interested in South Park. And if this gets bigger and you're
in philosophy or psychology or any of the good stuff we talk about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if this show blows up, that's great, because we might offer better rewards for our Patreon. We might have gift baskets that we send everybody who's a $1 Patreon subscriber. So if you want a gift basket, then be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, South Park. In this episode of South Park, they're about the evolutionary psychology and biological nature of man, coupled with a boy who really wants a Nintendo Wii. And that boy is Cartman. And Cartman is a character with a narcissistic personality who is unable to wait 3 weeks until the Nintendo Wii is released to the public. So as any rational person would do when they are unable to wait, he puts himself into, I'm sorry, how do you pronounce that word again?
Cryogenic.
Cryogenic. Into a cryogenic suspension by burying himself in snow on top of Mount, I think it's Eelbert. And he wakes up hundreds of years later in the year 2546. At this point, the entire world is atheistic and dedicated to rationality and science, thanks to Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, they got what they want, a world without religion, so they can finally have peace. Except atheism divided into several denominations who are all at war with each other, because each of the groups of atheism feel like they have the answer to the great question. I don't know what that question is. Does this remind you of anything, Robin?
That bit reminds me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, I was thinking about libertarianism in general.
Well, we'll get into that. But you're talking about, yes, carry on.
So, the most important part to remember about this episode is that Cartman is informed of the existence of the Nintendo Wii he wanted at the Museum of Technology in New Hampshire. So the whole plot is based around him going to get the Wii, and that's very important. A little bit less important, but still crucial, are the underlying philosophical notions of war, violence, and humanity. Go God Go, I would rate probably a 9 to a 9.5 out of 10, just because of the humorous way that they're able to explain a very complex psychological concept. And that concept is that humans have predisposed biological tendencies, intuitions, traits, influences that do not go away that easy. If you're afraid of heights or if you're afraid of spiders, it's not like, oh, I have free will, so I can do whatever I want regardless of my feelings and my fears, and I can just go do that. No. Free will is a concept. I should not use that word because that's a whole tangent. But essentially, the show is suggesting that hard work leads to the results you want, not just changing one thing or one cause of violence. It's just an excuse for the violence, so they have something to.
It's a domain in which what you're saying is what I'm understanding you saying the show is saying, which I haven't seen by the way, is that it's making the point that religion is one domain in which an innate human tendency is manifest. If we don't have that domain, it will nevertheless be manifest in some other domain, but it will be essentially the same thing manifest.
Yes, precisely. And what the show suggests is, which I forgot about this, but I forgot the show actually suggests that the root cause of all human violence is maleness and not religion. So that you need to get rid of all males to.
This must be a recent. Is this a recent show they put together during the Me Too thing and the SARS scandals? Is that?
No, they've been on top of this for a very long time, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I've been watching shows from a really long time ago that like perfectly delineated really complex issues and joked at issues that are very prevalent.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
okay.
Men are designed to fight. It's an innate part of manliness and human nature. So if you take away religion, men will just find another excuse. And in this case, different denominations.
Mm.
One of the greatest denominations, or the more central ones, is actually a group of highly evolved otters, and they're in the AAA, which is like the Atheist Alliance something. I don't know, it's not important. The important part is that they're otters. Because it jokes at, it really makes fun. People who watch South Park normally don't realize these complexities. It's just really absurd and funny. And you can't like not like it, even if you disagree with a political view, because you don't know whether they're agreeing with the view or not, or making fun of it or not, because it's just that absurd. And basically, the envision of a utopian society with no religion is attacked by the show. And God is something that I would say, from a psychological perspective, is evolutionarily, I don't want to say the word designed. It's an innate biological truth. It's innately part of human nature. And it would be almost impossible for humanity to abandon belief in some type of higher power. And if you look at all the civilizations and all the societies throughout history that were actually successful, they all have some type of belief in a higher power. And you'll notice that a lot of the modern atheists tend to be the spiritual types with the third eyes and the chakras, because the belief in some type of higher power just seems so psychologically rooted as a so that's essentially the argument of the show, is that getting rid of religion doesn't stop people from killing each other.
So it's interesting. It makes sense that you would go from, like South Park, that they would go to the dividing into denominations of atheism as what comes after religion. Not only because obviously atheism is by definition kind of the opposite in some crude sense of religion, right? But because I think what might be the fundamental thing here is that the thing that causes that domain to be, if you like, a medium for that part of human nature that is violent and tribal, right? I think the reason that domain, religion as a domain and atheism in the show works is because what's important about the domain is that it makes claims to truth, right? It's a domain involved with truth claims, and it's not. And it seems to me that the fact that the idea that you can be completely confident in what you know, that's the thing that you need to turn a good person into a violent person. In fact, there's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, but that to make good people do bad things, you need religion. And by making the religion, in that sense, a religion out of the atheism, right, which it's so close, it so naturally is, because it's a whole way of thinking that asserts access to truth that's privileged, right? That's really what's being, I think, pointed to there. You can get to this, and I wonder. So that's like the epistemological thing.
What's
right?
that quote? That
To make good people.
No, the very beginning of your newest article that I won't say because it's a surprise for everybody. When it comes out,
The
but
purism article.
There's a quote, something about how you believe something, as opposed to
it's not. It's not what you believe that makes you dangerous. It's how you believe it.
Exactly.
And I really like the way you said that's a quote, because that's a Robin Kerner line.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's that quote from that brilliant man.
That's
Who
right.
was that quote? Oh, that was you. No, I honestly didn't know. So yeah.
No, it is. That was me. I've done a lot of work recently, and this is relevant. So this is a good tangent, I think. As I know, on
this isn't a tangent. This is South Park, but
I was gonna do some more metaphysics and epistemology before going into like political epistemology, but as I call it, which I don't even know if it's a thing, but it's a thing to me. There are a lot of work about authoritarianism, and especially like looking at George Orwell and what actually he was writing about, and how he talks about how he isn't against fascism, he's against orthodoxy. In other words, for him, the basis of tyranny is epistemological, right? It's not the content of the belief, it's the manner of the belief. And so I kind of encapsulated that idea, which I guess, come to myself before I really understood that was what Orwell was all about, in this line, which is, it's not what you believe that makes you dangerous, it's how you believe it. And I've used versions of that line in a couple of articles that I've written. I wrote one about authoritarianism, I wrote one about Beware the Enlightened Class, which speaks more to Orwell and where he was coming from, and the dangers of orthodoxy. But the point that you made earlier, I'm going to jump around a bit so we can get it all out on the table and we can, sift like we do. You made an interesting point about, we are, let's say, biologically, neurologically disposed to believe in a higher power. I wonder if the disposition is that specific. Is it actually that we're directly disposed to believe in that, or do we need to believe in something that systematizes what isn't what we haven't formally systematized, right? Is it that we, is that the thing that we need, and then we get to the higher power, right? Because obviously, if you need some kind of order, then having a grand orderer would be, you could see how you would get there. I find it hard to imagine, like, neurologically, what it would actually mean that we have this, we kind of come with this, pre-shaped need. We got a God-shaped box that we got to put something in, like in kind of in the sense of like Chomsky's universal grammar. Like, we all have this basic structure in language. Do we really have it with our metaphysics? But we do. What I do think is accurate, and I think we need to tease out these levels, is that there is a disposition, clearly, to in-group preference, to kind of groupism, right? Now, maybe the idea of God it's very hard to actually have that in a coherent way without postulating something that, something beyond, that we give an allegiance to. Everyone in the group gives an allegiance. I wonder about these relationships.
Well, wonder no more, because I actually have the answer to this, and I think you'll be very satisfied.
Okay.
In a similar, think about it in the context of men inferring or over-inferring women's sexual interest in them. And this is part of error management theory. And it's a very general theory, but in ambiguous situations, people tend to attribute the ambiguity or the impersonal effects to unintentional or inanimate, impersonal. Because it's impersonal, because they don't feel like they had anything to do with the situation. They attribute.
Hold on, Austin, you've lost me here. What effects are we talking about? You used the word effects. Effects of what on what? What are we talking about?
If there is an ambiguous situation that someone feels as if they have no control over,
Okay.
they will attribute the situation to anything that doesn't have to do with them, because there's already this feeling that it doesn't have to do with them because they are not in control of it. If something randomly happens in front of them and they don't know how it happened, they know that they didn't do it. I didn't create the moon. It wasn't me that went up there and created the moon. So you're going to attribute the existence of the moon to something impersonal or unintentional. And then...
But you don't need a theory for that. I mean, you know you didn't have anything to do with it, so all you're doing is knowing what you know.
Yes, error management theory in particular describes how there can be different types of errors, which they call like error 1, error 2, type 1, type 2.
Errors, sure, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And the two types of errors differ pretty drastically in terms of inaccuracy. And there's the first type is false positive, and the second type is false negative. And obviously, a false negative is worse than a false positive because it means from an evolutionary perspective, you could end up dead.
So just to be clear, the false negative would be there isn't a snake about to poison me, when in fact there is, right? Correct. That's deadly. That's what you're talking about, right? Whereas the other side, which is if you make the mistake in the other direction, there is no dangerous snake there, but you think there is, okay, that might be a bit strange, it might cause you to do something, but it's not going to kill you.
Exactly.
Right.
False positives are not necessarily wrong. And that's why...
Oh, you've just done a Harris G. Peterson move there. Yes, they are wrong. It's wrong. It's by definition.
False positives are not detrimental.
Right.
Is what I should say.
Okay.
Yeah. I meant wrong in like a moral way. But that was error in my words because.
Okay. Yeah. I think you mean actually in a I would say more of a practical way.
Utilitarian type way.
Yeah.
So
yes.
So it's not dangerous to have false positives in the grand schemes of things. Utilitarian is actually probably the right word because like people thought people can be overly cautious and it could cause a lot of problems, but in the grand scale of utilitarian
now hold on, would it, but Hitchens would say, I think with quite some justification, no, there's a false positive that's massively dangerous because he would say because we positively believe in this theology, we go around murdering people. So, okay, it's not you could say, well, it's not dangerous to me, but it's dangerous to all of us collectively. Well, and then you could say, if I go around murdering someone, it is more dangerous to me because they're going to want to stop me.
And a threat management mechanism that evolved and is clearly a cognitive and animalistic bias for sure is dangerous in the sense of bad things happening. However, getting rid of that thing, that supernatural tendency does not get rid of the effect in and of itself that is the dangerous thing. People are still going to believe in, for let's say, karma. And karma might be a better theory in general. If someone's not religious but they believe in karma, that might be a better thing than religion in and of itself.
Okay, so this gets to the question, I think, of what is it that we're disposed to believe in? Because a belief in karma, I mean, and actually we bastardized the concept largely in the West when we use that word. But yeah, the idea that, what goes around comes around, it's kind of a crude Western bastardization of the idea of karma. That is a crude kind of systematization, and it doesn't posit necessarily any kind of supreme being or higher, something like that. So
Yes.
kind of spiritual.
But this efficient error management system innately minimizes the total costs of death. For thousands of years, if you sneezed wrong, you killed thousands of people.
Hold on a second. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. You're now talking about an error management system. You're saying that the disposition toward whatever this thing is we think we're disposed to believe in is the efficient error management system that causes us to survive better. That's what you're saying, right?
So okay. Homosexuality is a perfect example. I believe that homosexuality was correctly condemned and rightfully discouraged for different parts of centuries in different periods for good reasons, as well as encouraged in different areas of society for good reasons, because it was, again, error management. Disease, AIDS, I think probably
okay.
If you look throughout history, homosexuality was not as, like, read an 18th century novel, 17th century, Jonathan Swift, maybe even. I don't know how far back where you can see that homosexuality wasn't that big of a deal, or really so attacked as people like to claim it was traditionally. Like, even in 1920s, 1930s, it was way more just, oh, yes, that happens. People were much more understanding. I think the AIDS epidemic that is pretty recent is probably the innate predisposition, or at least partly responsible for homophobia. And I don't think it definitely, if you look through literature, I mean, people claim Bible verses like, the Bible said this, the Bible says everything. Like, it says shrimp is...
What about Alan Turing, Second World War? I mean, the guy was... I mean, people were put through hell because of their homosexuality before.
That is true, and you can find individual exceptions for almost anything with selective attention. But in general, the general consensus was, it was bad. I'll agree, but it wasn't. And it depends on the period too. Between 1910 and 1940 might be completely different than 1900 and 1910,
okay,
or World War II, or whatever.
But the general point you're making is, the reason you're bringing up homosexuality in this example historically is
because the stigma.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that the society, the group, has encouraged an attitude to behaviors that kind of, in general, across a distribution,
based on a variety of circumstances, by the way, which could change by country, by community, by citizenship, based on the individual's role in society.
But the naturally, a society pushes behaviors in a certain way, using stigma and shame and these kind of things to increase survival.
Exactly.
Okay.
And right now, discouraging. This is going to also, this stems into all the criticisms that I had with the Jordan Peterson video in my video by a lot of liberals and conservatives, but I am going to combat their criticism with the aid of feminist rats. Have I told you about the feminist rats? I think I have.
Go on.
It's the most interesting study I've ever read. It was 2 control groups and an experimental group, or 1 control group, 2 experimental groups
it would be, yes,
of mice, and overpopulated environment where they wouldn't have enough access to food versus area where they did have enough access to food. And in the other area, you saw things that can easily correlate to human societal values, such as the rats in the overpopulated area killing litters of their young, half of the litter, abortion, so to speak, a large increase in homosexuality, and then the funniest of which, feminist rats. And I think the exact wording was in the experimental groups, the female mice gained a significant amount of weight in comparison to the control group, and also were much more violent and aggressive towards the men, or male mice. So it happens in mice. We already see this. I'm coming at this from a standpoint of, I just did it from a philosophical and epistemological perspective, and now I'm providing evolutionary psychological proof that happens in reality. It's very hard to argue against this claim, in my opinion.
What it all hinges on, which is, you know, is there a pattern that operates reliably at the level of the collective, of the group, of the society? And how can you predict or correlate that with whichever individual experience of what the beings are doing? Now, obviously, rats and mice probably can't have be making the same decisions about, you know, conscious in conscious minds about homosexuality or abortion or whatever that humans can do.
No, humans rationalize what they innately feel.
Right, of course, but it isn't clear to me, even in principle, that there can be a correlation between something that I'm individually experiencing, right, and a societal pattern. But for this to actually work, in other words, what I'm saying is, okay, if there is something in us that causes us as a collective to behave in a certain way under certain conditions, then what is that thing, and how does it operate, and how does it cause each one of us, or a majority or a critical mass, to have a certain experience, are completely oblivious of that societal?
That's a great question, Robin. And the answer, I'm loving that I actually have answers to all of these questions, because this is my field. Evolutionary psychology, I think, is my field. I think I should get like an honorary degree in evolutionary psychology, because like I'm going well past Jonathan Haidt. Like, I'm taking his ideas and running with them.
Well, I want to know the answer to this, because I don't think this. I don't think
somewhat facetious, but okay. Here's the answer. I'm sorry. Here's the answer.
I'm amazed. If you convince me, I'll fall off my seat.
I'm very confident in this answer. When a baby is born, you can feed the baby, change the baby's diaper, give the baby water, every essential thing in Maslow's hierarchy of needs on the bottom tier, protection, all of those things. If you do not provide the baby attention, if you do not rock the baby, talk to the baby will literally die from lack of attention.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
We have needs as humans. We have needs that basically are Maslow's hierarchy: esteem, approval, acceptance, belongingness, purpose.
And they have physical effects if we get them or don't get them met. Yes.
Yes. And we are subconsciously biased towards those beliefs, which provide us with those hierarchies, because those are the beliefs that make us feel the happiest and give us the ability to even live. And that's why I'm so depressed, because I put intellectual honesty above
People have a
personal
preference to
needs.
believe things that
But
make them feel better. But
yes,
it's almost a tautology, but yes.
But, and I say that jokingly because a lot of it has to do with perspective, and you will find that you can take any bad situation and look at it from a good perspective. And the best perspective imaginable that I can think of that I construct is my personal meaning to life, because it solves the fundamental question of Maslow's needs for every single person, is the respect and admiration of other people based on the fact that they can suffer, and you can suffer, and therefore empathize with them as a human being rather as what their collective ideas are.
Okay, hold on a second. Hold on. That's a long way from the question I was trying to get at, so maybe my question wasn't clear.
The answer, sorry, that was a side thing. That was the meaning of life. Just a little side.
I asked his meaning of life.
But,
okay.
No, essentially, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs that turn into the belief factors, and it will overcome environmental stimulus or societal innate predispositions.
Okay. So let me see if I can I say back what I'm hearing you say and make sure I'm understanding you, and then I'll try and link it to what. Yeah. So I think what you're telling me is that, and this makes complete sense, that we are made, evolved, structured to believe things that favor our getting our needs met, right?
Exactly. Yes.
That's what you're telling me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can allow that, and I do, but I still have an itch that I don't think anybody's ever scratched, which is if certain behaviors cause me to get my needs met by mechanisms of which I'm not conscious, right? Which may indeed involve the bigger group of which I am a part, right?
Yes.
And yet I may experience, so used abortion, for example. I experience myself, if I'm about to have an abortion, as, I will experience having all these problems in my life. I'm not able to bring up this child. I don't have enough, I don't have, a financial basis for it. My relationship with the father, if I'm a woman, is bad, whatever. So my experience of my individual decision will be completely removed from all of the factors that in some causal fashion on another level of description are disposing me to make this decision. So can there even possibly be a causal, like a physical causal link between the factors that are requiring, let us say, my group to have fewer babies because of a population and resources issue, and my individual experience of my situation with the absent father, my lack of money and whatever, such that if all of those other factors that I cannot possibly perceive were different, I would experience my situation differently. I can't even imagine how even in principle that causal link can be traced, but I'm fascinated to know if it could be. That makes sense?
Well, basically, all of the environmental factors, all of the group factors, all of the innate predisposition, all of these things, media, friends, family, nature, nurture, all that stuff, ultimately, they're fighting for a person's selective attention. They're fighting for the inner voice in your minds details towards a certain issue. So in abortion, I think that one's selective attention is largely going to be based on morals. And you can look at the morality from either point, and language very helps with this. You notice someone who is pro-choice is not pro-murder, they're pro-choice. And someone who is pro-life isn't anti-choice, they're pro-life. They're picking up on the empathy or the good qualities. They're believing something because of the good things. And I don't think it is necessarily wrong to be pro-choice. It would be wrong to be pro-murder. It might be wrong in the sense of
okay, but hold on again. Now you're talking about that specific case. But the answer to the question you're saying maybe.
Well, rainbow morality theory. This is an article that I'm writing of how I describe morality, and I basically think of it as different shades of light, and each it's just a conceptual thing because language is hard to explain it, so conceptually it makes more sense. So all the colors each represent something different. Red might be empathy, another one be harm versus care. They're all based on empathy, but harm and care and respect for authority, all of these things.
These are Haidt's moral dimensions.
Yes. So the shade of red has almost an infinite spectrum, and it can go to various degrees, the shade of the color. And you can have maroon and you can have red, and those can be two completely different colors, but they're based on the same principle, based on how you see it. So in any situation, most people, whatever they're selectively attentive to is going to be the moral thing. They're going to be empathizing with the mother whose life is going to be ruined, or with the philosophical consistency of murder and the definition thereof being murder.
So let me capture what you're saying to me again, because I want to make sure I'm with you, because I think we might have hit on something cool here, which is that if I understand what you're saying correctly, then the mechanism that I'm asking for is that as society changes, different things cause individuals in greater or fewer numbers to attend to different things morally, ethically.
Yes.
So right. Okay. So you have a mechanism via morality, which is cultural, which is societally influenced, right, to influence individual behavior. So morality becomes the medium of transmission, right, between the meeting of the needs, basically survival of as many beings in this community, whatever it might be, the collective metric, to my individual experience of my decision when I'm about to get an abortion.
Yes.
Fascinating. I love that. That's really interesting.
Yes, and it's largely based on Sam Harris's book, The Moral Landscape, in which have you read that book?
No, I haven't, but now I'm going to have to.
He has a TED Talk on it too.
Oh, okay. I'll definitely check that out.
The TED Talk is, and I'll link it in the description. The Moral Landscape, maybe. But
no, that's great. No, do, and I will check that out, because this is so up my street, and obviously I'm all about Haidt and Peterson, all of that. And now you've mentioned Harris, and we did a Peterson thing, and you mentioned Harris, and they had this discussion.
They had a great discussion. And by the way, I emailed Jordan Peterson because I want to have a debate with him, because I asked him questions, and now a lot of people criticized me for basically me asking stupid questions and him answering them flawlessly, and not taking me seriously as someone who was able to intellectually box with Peterson, so to speak, which is which I want to find out. So, because I actually want to debate him. So, and we can do an episode where we both kind of do a debate with him. But my debate is basically going to be what this episode was about, basically. Because he says that religion is essential for society, whereas
so indeed, which takes us back to where the starting point for this show. And because that's, to me, that shifts the question. Yeah, there probably is something that could be called religion that is essential for a collective of human beings. But again, now what is this religion that's essential? Does it have to involve, what does it have to involve to make
not
it
organization? That's
not not formal organization.
No,
No.
that's my contention.
Does it have to involve a privileged access to a set of truth claims with moral impact? Or does it have to involve privileged access to any truth claim whatsoever? You see what I mean? Like,
here's where the purist and definition falls to pieces, because not anymore. Where we're at in society, no. At a point in society when it was first starting out, definitely.
Well, no, hold on. What are you saying no to? Because as per the South Park episode, which is the hook for the show, the atheism thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's not about the being, but it is about the same religious epistemology. It's a privileged access to truth, right? It's a belief about access to truth. Now,
yes,
it isn't.
That is going to be pulled into, that human nature is going to be pulled into, and is continually more and more being poured into arbitrary and meaningless social convention, such as pineapples on pizza versus no pineapples on pizza.
Oh, this is the Jonathan Swift, the war over the eggs. Is that what you're talking about? Which way up is the egg?
You know what? That's an interesting way to look at that.
Did I understand you right? You're saying that.
Yeah.
You're saying that the religious impulse can be manifest in something as contingent and superficial as you like.
And so sports. That was my sports episode. Remember, that was basically my sports
episode.
Absolutely.
Look, I get the relationship. This is great. I get the relationship between all the stuff we're talking about. But so you would go so far as saying then that essentially commitment to a sports team is religious.
Well, I don't like being put on the spot like that.
But that comes straight out of what you said. I'm just.
I'm kidding because I don't know how to answer that, because that was I feel like there is some. I feel like that because of the seriousness of that question, I feel as if there is some linguistic definitions that are being slightly changed in order to infer a partial truth that I'm not.
Hold on. I'm just using the words as you use them. I'm just trying to reflect it back to you, right?
Let me think about it for a second.
Absolutely. We can do another show on it. You can think about it till next week for all I care. That'd be great, Austin. I'm sure you'd come up with great stuff if we did.
No, I'm not saying that sports is religion. I'm saying that there is an essential part of religion that is not religion in and of itself, that has to do with group mentality. And that group mentality element of religion is manifested in sports. But it's only an element of religion. So then
I'm not understanding fully what you're saying, because I thought your point about the pineapples on pizza and social convention was that could be a sufficient kind of location for the religious impulse or focus.
It is, but the religious impulse that I'm talking about that is bad isn't the belief in God. The belief in God is not, in fact, from Carl Jung's perspective, I might be somebody who believes in God. The belief in God is not the part of religion that needs to be replaced. It's simply the tribal or group instinct.
Right, but I think we're also saying that the tribal or group instinct, that's part of our nature. So the idea of replacing it is as silly as trying to replace E equals MC squared with something else. It's just what is.
You're not replacing it. You're finding a medium through which it can. Right.
So again, I'm just using the words you're using. You used the word replace, so I'm used it back to you.
Okay. So you're right. So replace.
So you're saying that religion is what? Let's try and tie this up a bit, because I think I agree with the things that you've said But what I'm not understanding is whether what you think what you've said is the whole story about what makes religion religion. Like, are you? What are you saying?
That's just faith in a. No one likes to feel like everything is meaningless and random. People like to feel like there is some type of purpose. There's some type
so you're saying that's the crux of religion? Are you saying,
yes.
Are you saying the fundamental thing that makes a religion is that it gives, is that it justifies the sense of purpose and gives the sense of purpose to the person who believes in it? And that is a sufficient condition for the thing believed in being religious or religion. That's an interesting definition.
You're very, very close. That's a huge part of it, as well as the whole psychology of God, the psychology of when you're talking to God, when you're praying. It will help you extremely, because what you're doing is you're basically seeing a psychologist, because that's what a psychologist is going to do, is force you to think about and talk about what you need. So that element that you just said is like that element, and it's close to the core, but it's not the purest form of the core. The purest form of the core is an external locus of belief,
and it's
or external locus of control. Like,
okay, but hold on, but that's, I mean, to me those two things are so different, because I don't need to have an actual belief in anything to know that there is stuff that is controlled not by me. I mean, right?
Jordan Peterson gets at that. Jordan Peterson, when he asked if he believed in God, he said, I've thought about how to answer that question intellectually, honestly, without polarizing two groups. And my answer to that is, I behave as if God exists. So yes, you are right. You do not have to have the belief to accept the fact that there is either order or disorder in the universe and it's going to happen. But it helps people with...
No, but you've made a big jump, right? Because we were just talking about there are things that I do not control. There's a big difference between, and that thing is in any way godlike or a god or has the characteristics that we associate with God, right? There's a big gulf between those two things. What I'm saying is, I think babies, as soon as babies have anything like a non-infantile cognition of the world they're in, like before they're like 1 or 2 years old, they know about external locus of control, right? But that's not the same thing as...
Continue.
I'm saying that's not the same thing as what I think Peterson was referring to there, where he says that he believes as if God exists, because it's impossible to believe as if no external locus of control exists, but many people at least experience themselves as living as if there is no God, and I'll give them that they do live as if there's no God. Maybe not as if there's no morality or there's no, but it's like God. If you're talking about God, you're talking about specifically kind of an external locus of control in relation to certain human behaviors with respect to other human beings, right? You're starting to kind of focus on what it is that may or may not be controlled by some external thing, and you're starting to lean heavily on what you mean by the word control as well, in a way that external locus of control, well, of course, I don't control everything in the universe, right? So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. There's a big gap here, and I want to keep a grip on everything you're saying.
Yes, I'm writing down a response that's going to end the episode, because I think it answers the question, and we're going to basically end the episode there. I think.
Okay. Okay. We can leave a cliffhanger, an intellectual cliffhanger. Yes. Is that what we're going to do? Okay. I like it.
And how do you spell Patreon?
Patreon.
Oh, I got that right. Okay.
So what we've just done here is the philosophical equivalent of the end of the Italian job, which I love, by the way. We could do a show on that.
Yeah.
The original Italian job, not that disgusting, pathetic remake.
Okay, so I'm almost done writing this. I'm going to leave it at. I'll do some crossing out.
All right. So should I just hit stop now? You tell me when I hit stop.
I'm going to put it up, and you. Oh man, it's not going to do it because
God is the personification of the unknown. God is the personification of the unknown.
God is the personification of the unknown.
But that would mean God is, on Peterson's terms, the personification of chaos. And I don't think that is. But that's a good place to
and
start.
Religion is order. And religion is order.
But the personification of chaos doesn't make it order, or does it? That's a show. Question mark, right? Is that the show?
Balance between chaos and order. Yes. You want to do? Let's do chaos and order next episode.
All right. Yes. Yeah. Because
and this all came out of South Park and religion.
You and
South Park's portrayal of religion.
This is great. You've done good here, Austin. Again, you found a great hook, and we're circling around stuff that we love, topics we love. We're circling around Peterson again. We're on the chaos order God thing, and I'm sure a lot of our audience love Peterson as well. So I think they'll be up for that as a starting point for another show. So I'm fired up. I'm ready. Let's do more of this. Yeah. So shall I close the show here, and we'll
comment, subscribe, and see you guys later.
Absolutely. And it's patreon.com/no occasion, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Later.